Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with David, King Mashiach. This one's called The Banquet. King David, peace be upon him, was a man who completed his ways and attributes, who was perfectly rectified without any deficiencies in anything, a righteous man who did everything for the sake of heaven. You see, unlike other religions, the man that God chose as his eternal anointed was not born perfect, because there is no such thing. But rather, he was as God created the universe, leaving just a bit unfinished, all for the sake of personal development. This is how everything was made, perfectly imperfect. The Holy Ari says that this is why man was created. And that is why we are here, to become better in every way, to improve upon ourselves. When you become better, by default, your surroundings become better. This is what it's all about. Now, this is not a religious thing exclusively, but rather a human being thing. If you have a pulse and half a brain, do this, right? As God created us all to be a better friend, a better sibling, better son, better father, better husband, better student, better teacher, better everything, right? A better person to everyone around you, a better person to yourself. These cover all the core values that David exuded on a basic human level, and this is the responsibility of us all. In addition to the basics, which obviously include the 7 Noahide laws, right? Just how to behave like a human being, David perfected every aspect of not only his own humanity, but as a king, as a student of the Torah, as the head of the Sanhedrin, as a Jew, as a judge, and of course as God's chosen. So there's like your basic, that is your basic, just your ticket to exist here. And then on top of that. And so you understand that this is exponentially more difficult than how it sounds, as said in the Zohar Truma. It says of him, Rabbi Abba opened with the verse from Psalm 63:1, a song of David when he was in the desert of Judah. What is different here from other praises? Because in other Psalms, David doesn't say where he said praise, but here he is in the Judean desert. But not here alone. He also named the place in Psalms 34:1 of David when he disguised his sanity before Avimelech, whereupon he drove him out and he departed. Psalms 54:2 when the Ziphim came and said to Saul, "Is not David hiding with us?" and many other places as well. This is to show the world the praise of David, how even when he was tormented and being hunted, he would make time to sing praise and worship before the Holy One, blessed be He. And though he said them all through Ruach HaKodesh, in other words, all the Psalms, he was an open channel in order to receive. So all the Psalms, though they were all said through Ruach HaKodesh would not dwell upon him until he made an effort. You don't just get it, you have to work for it. As is with every man who wishes for Ruach HaKodesh to dwell upon him from above, must first awaken it from below. This is in the Zohar. And though he was being pursued, he never ceased praising and glorifying his Lord for everything. Thanks for the troubles, I appreciate it. You understand? He even thanked God for the trouble he was in because God put him there, and he knew that it was for his betterment, and so it was. When David prepared, sanctified, and purified his body, then Ruach HaKodesh found a worthy host, if you will, to dwell upon, and through this he praised and exalted the King, God, and all this for the rectification of the world below as it is above. Where it says, of David, le David, right? A lot of Psalms start like that. A man who has completed his rectification and rectified himself, a righteous man, and David has not changed ever. In other words, once he reached that level over there, right? That's that benchmark. Now, David being awesome does not take away from the deeds and attributes of those who came before him. To the contrary, David would not be where he was if it were not those who preceded him, which is why context and standards are important to give us a greater understanding of all things. That being said, We are now going to read from the words of the Maharal of Prague. Rabbi Yehuda Leva, born 1522, died 1609 in, you guessed it, Prague. He was a genius, a mystic, a Kabbalist, a philosopher, a posek, not to mention one of the greatest Torah scholars of his time. From some of the ancient Chassidut writings and accounts, it is said that he's the one. Remember the story about the golem that was going through the city? He's the guy that created the golem. Why? To protect the Jewish community from anti-Semitism. He created like a Frankenstein's monster called Herschel. In his book, the book is called Netzach Yisrael. That's the name of the book, The Eternal of Israel. And this was taken from 1 Samuel 15:29. Vegam Netzach Yisrael lo yeshaker. Netzach, eternal. Yisrael, Israel. And so, here it says the strength of it there. The Eternal One of Israel shall never lie nor repent, for he is not a man to repent. Yep. This obviously refers to God. In any case, in this book, chapter 33, he speaks of the Seudah, the banquet that God prepares for the righteous at the end of days. There is another Seudah, Seudat Or Leviathan, the feast, the banquet of the skin of Leviathan. That is not this. This is something particular with a very small group. Okay? But this is nevertheless at the end of days. That is discussed in Masechet Psachim 119b, and it goes like this. What is the meaning of that which is written, and the child grew and was weaned, Vayigamal, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned, from Genesis 21:8. In the future, the Holy One, blessed be He, will prepare a feast for the righteous on the day that He extends, Sheigmol, that's how it's translated, His mercy to the descendants of, wait for it, Isaac. Okay, now pause. Why Dafka, the descendants of Isaac? Why not Abraham? Why not Jacob, right? He was the son. This is why. Isaac was the son, specific, very particular, by name, that was promised to Abraham, the one who would carry his seed and the blessings that go with it, as said in Genesis 17:7-8. And I will establish my covenant between me and between you, says God to Abraham, and between your seed after you, as in the one that's coming after you from your seed, that's who I'm doing it with. Straight up. You don't have to, I know who this is. I've seen the ridiculousness online. Just finish reading the verse. Your seed after you throughout their generations. In other words, it starts with him. Throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant to be to you for a God and to your seed after you. And I will give you and your seed after you the land of your sojournings where you are currently at, the entire land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be to them for a God. Now it's to them for a God. So it's not singular, plural. Verses 7 and 8. Now, as we know, there was also Ishmael, right? If you're thinking, great question. There was also Ishmael, and he also circumcised, reluctantly, but still at age 13, 14. But the Abrahamic blessing, which is what we're talking about here, did not go to him, but to Isaac, as God said directly in the simple text in Genesis 21:12. In other words, who is Abraham's seed after him? And God said to Abraham, be not displeased concerning the lad, meaning Ishmael, because Sarah said, get him out of this house. Do not be displeased concerning the lad and concerning your handmaid. Whatever Sarah tells you, hearken to her voice, for in Isaac will be called your seed. That's it. Okay, so now we absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, know who this is. Solidifying it through the greatest of all trials, Genesis 22:17-18, that I will surely bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed, meaning coming from Isaac, so we already know that, as the stars of the heavens and as the sand that is on the seashore, and your descendants will inherit the cities of their enemies. And through your children shall be blessed all the nations of the world. In other words, through your direct seed, whoever is not your seed, they will be blessed simply for existing, which means it is within the world's best interest that the seed of Abraham is left unhindered and untouched, because you hearken to my voice. After the death of Abraham, if this is not enough for some people, I know, but watch this. Simple text. After the death of Abraham in Genesis 25:11, the Torah makes it a point that Isaac is the one that carries the blessing. Now it came to pass after Abraham's death that God blessed his son Isaac. Could have said his son Ishmael, but no, specifically Isaac. And Isaac dwelt near Be'er Lechai Roi. And later, when Isaac blessed Jacob in 28:4, you cannot bless somebody with something that you do not possess. And may he give you, says Isaac to Jacob, and may he give you the blessing of Abraham. You can't just throw around the blessing of Abraham. It is lineage. And he gave you the blessing of Abraham to you and, to your seed with you, that you may inherit the land of your sojournings, which God gave to Abraham. So there we go. From Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, Israel, and naturally the 12 tribes that came from Jacob. There's no contest here. It's very simple in the simple text. Just read that. This is not to say that Ishmael and Esav were not blessed. I mean, yeah, they were, not by merit, of course, but simply because they were the children of Abraham and Isaac. Has nothing to do with them and everything to do with who their father was. But the Abrahamic covenant and the blessings thereof are exclusively for Israel. Now, let's continue. And again, this is not to say that the rest of the world cannot be blessed, but it all depends on the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. How good you are to them or not. How they behave, good or bad, right? Okay, now let's continue. In the future, the Holy One, blessed be He, will prepare a feast for the righteous on the day that He extends, Sheigmol, His mercy to the descendants of Isaac. After they eat and drink, the celebrants will give Abraham, our father, a cup of blessing to recite the blessing. Usually after a big feast with at least 10 guys or 7, it depends. They give a cup. You have to say a blessing on a cup of wine. Not everybody does this, but it's a very honorable way to conclude the meal. Okay, so after this is done, everybody there gives the cup to Abraham. Abraham, our father, right? Cup of blessing to recite the blessing, as he is the first of our forefathers. And Abraham will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, as I am blemished, for the wicked Ishmael came from me. Abraham will say to Isaac, take the cup and recite the blessing. Isaac will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, as the wicked Esav came from me. Isaac will say to Jacob, take the cup and recite the blessing. Jacob will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, as I married 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah, in their lifetime, and in the future the Torah forbade them to me. Now, although at the time before the Torah was given, it was not prohibited to marry sisters, and Jacob saw that based on what Lavan did, he had no choice. There was a switcheroo, remember? So he had to play along with that. Therefore, he needed to marry all these sisters in order for the 12 tribes to come to the world, right? Meaning this was a one-time thing before the actual prohibition for the sake of heaven. But still, Jacob's like, and technically he didn't do anything wrong. The law was not given. But he understood, because he still lived according to the Torah before the Torah was there. Jacob will then say to Moses, take the cup and recite the blessing. Moses will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, as I did not merit to enter into the land of Israel, neither in my life nor in my death. Abraham was born outside, died in Israel. Isaac was born in Israel, died in Israel, never left the land of Israel. Jacob, born in Israel, died in Egypt, buried in Israel. Moses, born in Egypt, died on the eastern part of the Jordan. Right there. Moses then will say to Joshua, take the cup and recite the blessing. Joshua will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, as I did not merit to have a son. It is written, Joshua the son of Nun, in Numbers 14:6. And in the genealogical list of Ephraim, it states Nun his son, Joshua his son. 1 Chronicles 7:27, meaning his lineage ended with him. Joshua will then say to David, take the cup and recite the blessing. You see, all these humble tzaddikim, they're like, I can't, I have a blemish, please, I don't want it. David will say to them, I will recite the blessing, and it is fitting for me to recite the blessing as it is stated in Psalms 116:13, but we really have to read 112 before that for a better understanding. Psalm 116:12, how can I repay the Lord for all his favors upon me? I shall lift up a cup of salvations, and I shall call out in the name of the Lord. That's what it is. Kos Yeshua Tesa ubeshem Adonai Yekra. We say this verse in Havdalah when we lift the glass of wine, when we bless the wine at the end of Shabbat. Now, of this passage, the Talmud, the Maharal brings forth valid questions, and they are: why does this feast correspond with the descendants of Isaac and not of Abraham? Just like we asked, makes sense. And did Avshalom not come from David? Avshalom, who tried to kill his father, also kind of like a wayward son, like Ishmael and like Esav, right? So why then were Abraham and Isaac not able to bless the cup because they bore Ishmael and Esav, and David can if he bore Avshalom? Valid questions. You're going to love the answers even more, as this is very telling for what the end is supposed to look like. The end meaning the end. You can see. He says, but this is the Maharal, but this matter, that the Holy One, blessed be he, will prepare a feast for the righteous descendants of Isaac, the righteous descendants of Isaac, on the day when he bestows loving kindness, chesed, on them, to those who receive the aspect of judgment. For context, Abraham is the attribute of chesed, loving kindness, in this world. Isaac is the attribute of din, gvura, judgment, in this world. So that's why it says of course, Isaac, of course, is the child of Abraham. But we're talking about specifically, God is going with meaning where those attributes come from. So that's why it specifically says Isaac, okay? The children of judgment, if you will. That would be Israel, and this is where God is counting it from in this instance. But now, at the feast, the Holy One, blessed be he, will give them chesed, those that have countered judgment, then they've been carrying judgment our entire existence. That is where God will say, enough for the judgment, here's the chesed. You see, that's why it says the children of Isaac. Now, this is referring to another source from his works, where he says that the sons of Isaac are grateful of the torment that God gave them, just as David was, and just as we've been learning. As there was no one who was afflicted as he was, meaning as Isaac was. Hold on, let's explain. Chill out now. Genesis 27:1. It came to pass when Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see. And later in Midrash Rabbah it says that Isaac renewed the afflictions. Now, if you are a bit lost regarding this and you're starting to think all these foreign thoughts, we did a class all about this, what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob brought to the world for the first time for the sake of heaven. This is what we are referring to here, that no one was afflicted more than Isaac. It was in one of the later classes in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. Abraham brought visible aging, Isaac brought affliction in one's old age, and Jacob brought sickness or illness before death. That's kind of like a warning that something is going to happen. Now, again, I know it sounds backwards, but you can check out the teaching. It was in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. You could go into the series. The title is called Last Will and Testament, and it's in chapter 52d. It's all about these things and the breakdown. So this is what I'm referring to over there. Anyways, let's continue. And this feast, this banquet, is for all the troubles and afflictions that they went through in their exile. We are still in that exile. Now we must explain the fact that we are exiled, and yes, so long as we do not have a temple, we are in exile. Though we have returned to the land of Israel, affliction brings to merit. As we have been saying with David, as said in Masechet Brachot, if one received affliction with love, what is his recompense? The answer can be found in Isaiah 53:10, of all places. Here, pay attention right now. And the Lord wished to crush him. He made him ill. If his soul makes itself restitution, then what does he get? What is the recompense? He shall see children. He shall prolong his days, and God's purpose shall prosper in his hand. Isaac indeed saw children, lived a long life, and prospered. Okay. doesn't exactly fit the bill of, This goes for anyone who receives the affliction with love, just as David did. And God gave him a name forever. We're going to continue with the Ramchal. The righteous will eat their reward. And this is called a seudah, banquet, as this is their reward for all the suffering and afflictions. This seudah, this banquet, is not physical. They ain't sitting around the table over there with cushions, okay? But rather it is the manifestation of the reward. Remember, these are the best words that our feeble minds can understand for the world to come. We don't know what the world to come is going to look like. We don't. That's why these are the best descriptions, and they could barely scratch the surface, if at all, okay? For the word seudah is not just related to the root sa'ad, okay? Seudah, sa'ad. What does he mean by this? We need context, sa'ad, right? So what does this word sa'ad, seudah mean? Because if you're going to Google Translate, banquet, feast, whatever, meal. But wait. Genesis 18:5, when Abraham fed the angels. Ve'ekecha pat lechem ve'sa'adu libchem. Seudah, sad, right? Here we go. Ve'sa'adu libchem, achar tavu ki al ken avartem al avdechem. And I will make a morsel of bread and sustain your hearts. Sa'adu translates here as sustain your hearts. It didn't say your bellies. It said your hearts. Okay, so there's a connection to eating and feasting because he was preparing bread. Hold on to that. Now, let's see how David uses this. Psalms 20, verse 3. Ishlach ezrecha mikodesh umitzion yis'adecha. Here it is again. May he send your aid from his sanctuary, and may he support you from Zion. So we have sustain, and we have support, for the same word freely translated as feast. Psalms 119:17. Se'adani ve'ivashea ve'esh'a bechukecha tamid. Sustain me. Sustain again, sustenance. Sustain me, and I shall be saved, and I shall constantly engage in your statutes. David's telling God, give me breath and I'm in Torah. That's all I need. That's sustaining me. And his king and his son, King Solomon, in Proverbs 20:28 said, Chesed ve'emet yatzru melech, ve'sa'ad bechesed kis'o. Kindness and truth preserve a king. Yatzru is formed a king, rather. And he supports his throne with kindness, with chesed. So you see, this really isn't about eating, but rather about supporting, sustaining, and lifting up, all in the spiritual sense, but we don't have spiritual words. We have physical words that can allude to. So I'm trying to paint give a whole picture for you over there. So this seudah, this banquet, is what sustains Israel as we receive our vitality from a different source than the rest of the world. Are we all ready now for a teachable moment within this teaching? Please turn to Deuteronomy chapter 8. In your own time, but it'll help. And let's begin reading the first 3 verses, keeping in mind everything that we had just learned. Every command that I command you this day, kol ha-mitzvah, not mitzvot, command in the singular sense, because really they're all one, that I command you this day, you shall keep to do. In other words, good for you that you know it, but if you don't live it, if you don't do it, it's worth nothing. Why? That you may live and multiply and come and possess the land that the Lord swore to your forefathers. This sounds a whole lot like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the blessings thereof. And you shall remember the entire way on which the Lord your God led you these 40 years in the desert in order to afflict you. Affliction. Isaac was the one that brought the affliction. To test you, to know what is in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. And he afflicted you and let you go hungry. God did this. And then, after he did this, after you received your affliction, then he fed you with manna, which you did not know, something completely new, not of this world, literally. Nor did your forefathers know. Something whole new thing is coming. Why? So that he would make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but rather by whatever comes forth from the mouth of the Lord does ha'adam live. It doesn't say man. It says ha'adam specifically. You have ish, fine, but this is specifically ha'adam. God is speaking through Moses to Israel and to Israel alone over here when it comes to these blessings, to these specific afflictions, and then what comes next. And if you think for some misguided reason that this verse applies to anyone other than Israel, then please allow me to correct those erroneous thoughts with the help of Ezekiel chapter 34. Verse 29, and I shall establish for them a plantation for renown, and they will no longer be hidden because of hunger. I've made you go hungry. Not anymore. Because of hunger in the land, and they will no longer bear the disgrace of the nations. Okay, anytime now. And they will know that I, the Lord their God, am with them, and they are my people. Who? The house of Israel, says the Lord God. And you are my flocks, the flocks of my pasture. You are Adam. It says you are man. No. Adam atem. Israel is called Adam. I am your God, says the Lord God. Only Israel are called Adam. That's it. When God speaks to Adam later on, it is only to Israel. Going back to what we just read in Deuteronomy, and he afflicted you and let you go hungry, and then fed you with manna. What was is what will be, which you did not know, nor did your forefathers know, so that he would make you know that man, that Israel does not live by bread alone, meaning by the physical substance of this world. But again, we're not done with the bread yet, but rather by whatever comes forth from the mouth of the Lord does Hadam, Israel, live. Our sustenance does not come from here. Our sustenance comes from there. But the way God works is that through him, it actually comes from the ground, specifically the bread. The life of Israel goes beyond the physical world. Let's continue. Your clothing, verse 4, your clothing did not wear out upon you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. You shall know in your heart that just as a man chastises, kasher yusal ish, any person, chastises his son, so does the Lord your God chastise you. And you shall keep the commandments of the Lord your God to go in his ways and to fear him. Those who made it through the chastisement, who made it through the trials of the wilderness that is called the world as we know it, can look back and see that all our needs were actually met. Because here we are, right? Because it all comes from our Heavenly Father. Everything that I afflicted you, and I made you go hungry. This is after he took them out of Egypt. Yes? Why? In order to test you. And then, when you stood your ground and you passed, I gave you something that did not exist in this world. Back to the Maharal. And so after the righteous eat and drink at the banquet of the Lord, after they have received their just reward for holding on, meaning everything is now illuminated and there is no ego, then out of respect to our elders, as commanded in Leviticus 19:32, where it says, "Mipnei sevatakum vehadalta pnei zaken ve're'eta me'elohecha ani Adonai." You shall rise before a venerable person, and you shall respect the elderly, and you shall fear your God. I am the Lord. So Abraham was described as zaken, right? The cup of the blessing is given to the father of those who are called the ancients. The ancients are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because their spiritual roots run really, really deep, preceding the creation of the world. And that is, of course, Abraham. That's why everybody at the table gave him the honor, because, Another thing we need to explain, a seudah is not only a lavish feast or banquet. It could mean any meal that one sits and eats, and even more so involving bread specifically. A restaurant, for instance, modern day Hebrew, you want to go to a restaurant, you go to a mis'adah, same root over there. And those who go there are called so'adim. Naturally, the modern day version took it from the Torah, the very source of and the root of Hebrew. Let's continue. Within every Su'udah there is a blessing, as written in Deuteronomy 8:10. And you will eat and be sated. Let's just continue reading from where we had before. And you will eat and be sated, and you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. Wow. So, v'achalta v'savata uberachta, God for what? For the land. You see how this connects to Abraham right over there in the beginning? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the blessings thereof? Okay. This blessing the Torah refers to is Birkat Hamazon, blessing of the food, specifically a meal that one eats bread in. Because bread is holy. Bread is within the temple walls, right? You have the showbread over there. And the before blessing that we say after we wash our hands, because first you say, let's say if it's on Shabbos, you say a blessing on the wine, you have to cover the bread. Why do you cover the bread? Not to offend the bread. Wine is judgment, bread is mercy. On Shabbat is different. During the week, you can have bread first and you can have wine within the meal. Okay? But in any case, you wash your hands, you dry them, you say the blessing, you dry your hands, then afterwards you say a blessing before you eat the bread. Okay? So this is that specific sequence, and bless God even for washing our hands, giving us the opportunity to wash our hands. Then we say, Baruch Adonai Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. He who brings forth bread from the earth. What is so special about this? Because water and trees and plants and all the fruit and vegetables and the seeds and everything that they produce can be accessed by all the animals, by nature, right? But to make bread, only people can do that, you see? And it comes specifically from the land. This is it. You're going to thank God for the bread coming from this land. Sure, from everywhere, but this land, as it said right there in Deuteronomy. How much more so when it comes from the land of Israel, with the water of the land of Israel, and the oil of the land of Israel, and all the spices and everything that is holy to begin with, and all mixed in together over there. Then through the blessing it is elevated. Wow. Now, just like we said, everything written in both the physical and is both physical and spiritual, we must understand that satiety does not only mean when one's belly is full, but rather when God fills our souls. That's really what this is about. For this reason, we bless him before we even eat the bread. It's not just like, okay, before and then we're done, or after and we're done. Before and then after, and even during the meal, you have to say also words of Torah to elevate it even more. You don't even understand what is going on over here. So again, before we eat, after we eat, while we even prepare the bread, when we prepare it, we have to sanctify ourselves. When my wife makes challah, and we only eat the challah on Shabbat, when she makes the challah, she has to purify herself to the highest degree, with prayers and focus and everything else that goes with it. As she lights a candle, she says specific words, specific prayers, and also rightfully throws me out the kitchen. Leave now, I'm doing... Sorry. It's for everybody's good. Then she gets to work kneading the dough with that proper intent every single time, because she knows that this blessed bread that she is preparing for us will be used upon our altar, that is our Shabbat table. And as I lift it over our heads, I bless God for giving us this ability to receive from the natural order, like we said, wheat, water, oil, spices, and what have you, and then put it all together and elevate it. Wow. And this is the point that the Maharal is making. He says, since God blessed Adam with this ability that the animals don't have, it is man's responsibility to recognize this and bless God for blessing him, as God is the source of all things, as well as the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge by which we are able to rectify creation. And so as much as man spent time, focus, and effort to complete, to satiate in this world, so too will the Holy One, blessed be He, grant them their just reward in the form of a Seudah, feast, banquet, in the world to come. This is the essence of the saying, Misha tarach be'erev Shabbat, yochal be'Shabbat. He who toiled on the eve of Shabbat will eat on Shabbat. If you prepared, on that time you will eat on Shabbat, right? This is from Masechet Avodah Zarah 3a, when God was speaking to the nations. You should read it, what happened to them. Nations want a peace. They're like, hey, God's like, where were you this whole time? Now you want in. Of course you do. God gives every person according to their deeds in this world. Midah keneged midah. He shows no favor, not to anybody. And so it makes sense that if you think someone can do something for you and you are the one to reap the rewards, you are sadly and biblically mistaken. This is why David was complete without deficiencies, he says, as he was blessed with perfection, and therefore he would bless the Holy One, blessed be he, because he did the work. Very much imperfect, yet overcoming all those things, you see. In Sanhedrin 93b it says, the Gemara asks, and is it the typical manner of a woman to take a heavy burden of 6 se'ah of barley? Rather, Boaz alluded to Ruth, that 6 descendants are destined to emerge from her, who would each be blessed with 6 blessings, and these are David and Mashiach, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. You might know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The Gemara elaborates, David was blessed with 6 virtues, as it is written, and one of the servants answered and said, behold, I have seen a son of Ishai, son of Jesse, of the house of Bethlehem, who knows how to play, and is a fine warrior, a man of war, and prudent in speech, and a comely man, and the Lord is with him. 1 Samuel 16:18. These are the 6 points. So, and these are also known as the 6 points of David, which is probably one of the reasons where we get the Star of David. It's called this way, though the Star of David has nothing to do with David at all. Like, at all, okay? What is known today as the Magen David, literally the Shield of David, right, was adopted only in the 14th century by Jews. But beforehand, if you start Googling this symbol over here, you'll find it in way, way more ancient cultures. It's a symbol of magic used for various incantations, which should also be very telling as to why the modern Zionist, anti-God, anti-Torah state of Israel chose it as its symbol on its flag, and Jews are just freely wearing it around their necks. We just don't know any better. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that it is bad, okay? But if you look up, for instance, the swastika, right? The swastika was used in also ancient occult symbols. That's why Hitler chose that. But then if you flip the swastika around, in other words, a swastika is like 2 backwards Z's. But if you flip them around, it's 2 forward Z's, then it's actually positive energy as opposed to what he chose in negative energy. All these things are symbolisms. Even Abraham had a thing. Abraham's shield was 4. It was like if you take a square and you put another square exactly in that thing. So just like the triangles, the 2 triangles of the Magen David, the Magen Avraham, the shield of Abraham, is 2 squares, kind of like that overlapping. There's also a pentagram. The pentagram is not a bad thing. Solomon's seal was the pentagram. Anybody could take something good, which they do, and they turn it bad. But again, the Magen David, 14th century European Jews, has nothing to do with David. But what we do know that was actually on David's shield was Psalm 67 in the shape of a menorah. You have these in almost every Sephardi siddur. It kind of looks like this. Okay, I hope you can see that. Where is it? Right there. Okay, so you have Psalm 67 perfectly aligned throughout over here. It's perfectly balanced. And also there are numbers going down. And this is what we use also to count the Omer that we are currently in, as it has exactly the number of days according to the letters, according to the words, and according to the letters down the center. This is a very, very high image, okay? And this is the menorah also from the temple. This was on David's shield. This one with the Psalms, and all his men carried their shields, and that was the logo on their shields. It wasn't the Magen David. According to today, it was Psalm 67. You could look it up. Okay, anyway, let's continue. Why was David's blessing the chosen blessing? Why was he considered perfect, or perfected rather, without deficiency? Let's find out. In order to do that, let's break down the list and their reasons until we get to David. So we've been through it, but now we're going to go why, and hopefully you'll see a pattern before I get to the end. And Abraham said, I am not blessing since Ishmael came from me. Now, I'm reading the words of the Maharal. Regarding this issue, Ishmael is a nation that is not worthy of existing, and it is deficient. I'll agree with the Maharal. They drew from Abraham, in other words, from his strength, that's where they got it, and the deficiency that Israel carries is because of Ishmael. Don't we know it? I mean, we're not making anything up right now, right? Okay. And if you knew the truth regarding these Arabs, he says, Ha'aravim ha'eleh, there is no nation that is lower than them. What does the Maharal mean by this? Now, without getting into all the history, because honestly, I really just don't feel like it, and I don't have all day to discuss all the wonderful things about, the peace-loving neighbors. So what I say to you now is little old me, experience living in Israel, the things that I know, the things that I've personally witnessed and seen, and, just eyes on my head seeing what's going on in the world. Okay? Few points. Nowhere in the Quran is Jerusalem even mentioned. Jerusalem is Al-Quds. Nowhere. It's not mentioned. Not only as far as the holy places to Muslim, it's not even named. Not a single time. Yet they claim it is theirs. Everything on October 7th, it's called the Al-Aqsa flood. We're going to come in Allah. Where? Show me in your holy book. The same holy book that says to kill Jews and everybody that doesn't believe in you and to cut their heads off and everything. That same book doesn't say anything about Jerusalem. Jerusalem is not holy. But it's okay. God's got a plan. That's one. Two, they brutally murder each other, mutilate each other, their own family members, and anyone they can who opposes them. It's in their book. So what do you think they're going to do to somebody they don't like? On September 11th, 2001, I really hope some of the right people hear this. The right people. From the right. Yes? Okay. When 3,000 Americans were killed in the Twin Towers, and regardless of who was responsible, yes? You know I have opinions on that? Please. Nevertheless, 3,000 Americans dead. I was in New York at the time. It was terrible. And then what do you see on TV? Party in the streets of Gaza. Yes, the poor, it's genocide. Every man, woman, and child was in the streets singing and giving out candies with joy and dancing for the dead Americans. And yes, guess what? All this is on YouTube still. They haven't taken it off. YouTube right now, do 9/11 Gaza. You'll see these are the innocent Gazans. Yes, okay. October 7th, 2023, in addition to at least 3,000 of Hamas who came across the borders and slaughtered, raped, mutilated, tortured, and pillaged our people. And again, regardless of who is responsible. Yes, we see a pattern. Okay. They were joined by the poor innocent Gazans wearing flip-flops. Coming across, all this is on video. How do we know? Because Hamas is the one that posted it. Guy calls his father with his bloody hands. Dad, I just murdered 10 Israelis with my bare hands. Oh, son, Allah, Bismillah, I'm so proud of you, my son. Praise God for what you have done. Innocent, poor. Okay, no problem. Proudly posted. Europe is gone, unrecognizable. The UK just released a statement on Pesach Sheni last week that stated there can be, after, the two Jews were stabbed in the street, and you see the buffoons of the police officers with the whistles, halt, and the guy's just coming at them with a knife. 3 of them were running away from one dude with a knife. If this was anywhere in the States, he wouldn't have a face, but okay. In any case, the UK said there can be a terror attack at any point, at any time, anywhere in the UK, and they cannot stop it. You know why? Because they are overrun. And you don't have guns, but they have knives, and they can have guns whenever they want. So, and Jews are still hunkering down. Okay. I'm just like, you remember, if you're not new to the channel, we've been here for a few years talking about what is it going to take Jews to realize. There's no place, because they're not getting protection from the government. Soon the government's going to turn. But okay, no problem. In fact, ask yourself why Muslims never stay in their own countries, but come to the Western ones and then try and turn the Western ones into Muslim ones. Last and certainly not least, forget about my opinion. Who am I? What do I know? Let's see what God says about Ishmael and what he would be. Genesis 16:12. Vehu yeh pere Adam, yado bakol veyad kol bo, ve'al pnei kol echav yishkon. He will be a savage of a man. Not Adam Pra'i. Pere, savage first, then Adam. In other words, he will be a beast in the form of a man. His hand will be upon all, and everyone's hand upon him, and before all his brothers he will dwell. I kill you, I kill you, I kill you, I kill. He kills everybody. Okay, no problem. And so, Ishmael. So let's continue with the words of the Maharal. This was not a coincidence, as all the negative that was within Abraham left him and manifested as Ishmael. And it is a deficiency for him that Ishmael came from him. And so Abraham was of the highest of the high, perfectly worthy of a seat at the table, the father of Israel. But not so when it came to blessing the cup at the end of the feast. And why? Because Ishmael, here's the answer, because Ishmael lengthened the exile and the trouble for Israel. This is your standard, and now we're going to see it. Any time that Israel is troubled by anybody, anything, there will be consequences. The same goes for Isaac, who bore Esav, who canceled the blessings and goodness bestowed upon Israel. Esav, as we know, is the Western world, and its religion is Christianity, blood obsessed and all that good stuff. Now, if you look at the situation of the world, the wealthiest Arab nations, right, your golden boy over there is kissing up to them. They're the wealthiest Arab nations with all their money. Do nothing for the betterment of mankind. They build their own towers and they buy cars and jets and yachts and robes. The robes look pretty comfortable, not going to lie, but whatever. Now remember, they didn't earn their wealth, right? Everything they have, everything they are, came from the ground. The Lord giveth, and the Lord will taketh away. And the only reason their free oil is worth anything is because of Esav, Edom, the United States in particular. All the oil companies? It's not American oil. You understand that the value of the US dollar is directly tied to these oil countries' produce? You understand that, right? If they fall, America falls, and vice versa. That's why all these shenanigans are happening. I have no love for either of them because I know what they did. And I know what they are doing. And empires that have been built on the blood of Israel have no future at all. Case in point, open a history book. The only reason they remain until the end, when every last one of them will be destroyed, is because of who their fathers were, and that is Abraham and Isaac. You see, counts for something. Moving along to Jacob. Jacob married 4 sisters. Leah and Rachel were the daughters of Lavan and his wife, and Bilhah and Zilpah were daughters of Lavan from handmaidens, which he then gave to serve his daughters from his wife. Since Lavan saw the lineage that was supposed to come from Jacob and Rachel, his soulmate, he switched the sisters in an attempt to bring confusion to the rectification of the world, which is why Jacob saw that he needed to marry all of them for the 12 tribes to come into the world, and so they did. Nevertheless, because this took place, the time was extended and the kingdoms ultimately split, right? Rachel is the mother of the kingdom of Ephraim from Joseph, and Leah is the mother of Judah and the eternal line of David. So you have the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel. And it is never a good thing that there are 2 kingdoms within one people. And so Jacob, as well, was not the right man for the job of blessing the cup at the end of the feast. And Moses. What can we say about Moses? I mean, we can say everything, right? As he was one of the highest souls to have ever been created, and his levels of prophecy are second to none, as well as his humility. Every single ounce of Torah that came to the world is by his merit. Thank you, Moshe Rabbeinu. So, Where was he deficient? Like we said, Moses did not merit to enter into the land of Israel, and as a result, the children of Israel did not inherit the land wholly. Joshua, though he was likened to the moon, Moses the sun, Joshua the moon, and the best candidate to continue the job of Moses, he did not have that power of Moses to remove all the abominable nations from within the land of Israel. And those of the nations who remained have been vexing Israel. So here we go. Based on what someone did or did not do, both passively, aggressively, by accident, through no fault of their own. If it vexes Israel, it is a deficiency. Numbers 33:55. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then those whom you leave over will be as spikes in your eyes and as thorns in your side, and they will harass you in the land which you settle. Straight up, right? How did they miss this? This was a direct command from God, and they did not fulfill it, as said in Judges 1:27-29. And Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants of Bethshan and its towns, Taanach and its towns, the inhabitants of Dor and its towns, the inhabitants of Yibleam and its towns, the inhabitants of Megiddo and its towns, and the Canaanites wanted to remain in this land. And it was when Israel became strong that they put the Canaanites to tribute, but they did not drive them out. We all know what's coming next, right? And Ephraim did not drive out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer, and the Canaanites dwelt among them in Gezer. That's why. So, because Moses couldn't enter, Joshua wasn't enough, and then this happened, vexing Israel. In fact, all the tribes did not complete the task, which is why the time of the book of Judges was one of the worst in Israel's history after the death of Joshua. We were just lost, man. And so, he says, the Maharal, if Moses would have brought them into the land, he would have destroyed all the inhabiting nations, and none, according to the explicit word of God, and none would remain, so they would not cause Israel to sin, and Israel would never have been exiled. So Moses was also not worthy to bless the blessed. And Joshua, though it was not his fault that he was not Moses, obviously, and he did the best that he could. This is not why he was not worthy. Rather, as said, he did not have a son. Again, it goes back from one to the next to the next. Now, this is deeper, obviously, than not having a son. So the Maharal says, since he did not have a son, what he had been given, meaning his heritage, his plot of land, because everyone that came to Israel had a plot of land, as we all have, eventually had been taken by Israel's enemies during the Assyrian exile of the 10 tribes, and that was severely damaging to Israel. Therefore, Joshua was not worthy to bless God, for he too had a deficiency. So again, we're seeing the pattern, right? Anyone who had anything to do with the embitterment of Israel throughout history, even though no fault of their own, cannot make this blessing, and these were literally the best people in the world. So we have a short exclusive list of the greatest human beings to have ever lived, and yet they fall short of blessing God because they, as themselves pointed out, not worthy to do so because of deficiencies that, through no fault of their own, brought hardship and harm to Israel. Try and imagine the nations that went out of their way to harm Israel and that are talking smack right now. You understand? Okay, I hope so. But David said that he was worthy of the blessing. Humbly so. He goes, yeah, okay, I'm the one. Not like I am the one. That was not David. We know that, right? For he was special for the Seudah. This Seudah was almost like for him. Because every aspect of David is the example of King Mashiach that is to come. The one who will cancel out the Edomite empire, just as David did, as said in 1 Chronicles 18:13. V'asem be'edom nitzavim vayu kol edom avadim leDavid. And he placed governors in Edom, and all the Edomites were slaves to David. And the Lord made David victorious wherever he went. What you are going to see here is, where the others are deficient, David picks up the slack. All of them were necessary. Nobody could do what anybody that came before him did or after. Everyone did their job, but it led up to David. And regarding him begetting Avshalom, here's that answer. This is a sign for King Mashiach, as said in Masechet Brachot 10a. Why was the story of Avshalom adjacent to that of Gog and Magog? This means that when you read Psalms 2, if you read Psalms 2, Psalms 2 is all about Gog and Magog. It starts like this. Why have the nations gathered, and why do kingdoms think vain things? Kings of land stand up, and nobles take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. That's Psalms 2. Psalms 3 starts like this. A song of David when he fled from Avshalom, his son. O Lord, how many have my adversaries become? Great men rise up against me. So the Talmud says, a certain heretic said to Rabbi Abahu, it is written, a psalm of David when he fled from his son Avshalom, Psalms 3:1. And similarly it said to the chief musician Al Tashchet, a michtam of David when fleeing from Saul into the cave, and that is Psalms 57:1. Which event is first? Since the event with Saul was first, it would have been appropriate to write it first, says a certain heretic. Zero understanding. Rabbi Abahu answered him, saying, for you who do not employ a homiletic method of juxtaposition of verses, it is difficult. But for us who employ the homiletic method of juxtaposition of verses, it is not difficult, as the sages commonly homiletically infer laws and moral lessons from the juxtaposition of two verses. As we've said, there are rules of studying Torah. Actual rules. You don't just read it and like, oh, I get it now. No, you don't. We read them every morning, these rules in Shacharit prayer, and you could even look them up for yourself, so you know I'm not making this stuff up. Google Rabbi Ishmael's 13 rules or principles and see what comes up. These are how to learn Torah. And through them, we have learning and understanding, and if they don't fit, then it doesn't fit. And you'll see this is how the sages go about it. Makes perfect sense. The Talmud concludes, why was the chapter of Avshalom juxtaposed with the chapter of Gog and Magog? They are juxtaposed so that if a person should say to you, expressing doubt with regard to the prophecy of the war of Gog and Magog, against the Lord and against his anointed, is there a slave who rebels against his master? Is there someone who is capable of rebelling against God? You too shall say to him, is there a son who rebels against his father? And severs the relationship with the one who brought him into the world and raised him, yet nevertheless there was such a son, Avshalom. And so too there can be a situation where people will seek to rebel against God in the end of days. This is what this is that connection, and that is there for a reason. Even if the events written in Psalms of David fleeing from Saul and Avshalom are out of order, and the events are out of order, but they are in the correct spiritual order. They teach us exactly what we need to know, also in the Torah. At least the entire middle part of the book of Exodus is out of order. Not only are the parshot out of order, but verses are out of order. Why is it like that? To confuse you? No. If you actually put the filter of how we learn Torah, it'll all make sense. We go through these things in the class. And so just as Ishmael and Edom have been vexing Israel throughout our entire existence, since the day they breathed air, this is not the case with Avshalom, who vexed only David and was dealt with, you see? So that's why David is not deficient because of that. And so let's wrap up the words of the Maharal. The Lord will prepare a banquet for the seed of Isaac, who received with love the aspect of judgment, everything we took. And David is the one worthy to bless the Holy One blessed be he, for he is the most complete of all. You need to go through all those guys in order to be complete. Therefore, he said in Psalms 116:13, Kos Yeshuotesa ubeshem Adonai ekra. I shall lift up a cup of salvations, and I shall call out in the name of the Lord. And though the patriarchs and the other righteous, Moses and Joshua, were significantly greater than David, he had been refined to the point of elevation to overcome their deficiencies even. Just as David had to overcome Avshalom, so too will King Mashiach overcome Gog and Magog. How can a person elevate themselves if not through trials and troubles and full of tshuva, which David did, and so will King Mashiach? This is why our full understanding is that Mashiach is actually a Baal tshuva, not perfectly righteous, none of that stuff, because the elevation that is tshuva, that rectification brings us higher than one who is perfectly righteous. If you're done, you're perfect, you're done. Nothing, gotta do nothing. But the more tshuva you do, you elevate and nonstop elevating and bringing everything with you. You see, this points the work that everyone, all of us, every one of us must do for the sake of the rectification of the world. We have that responsibility. You see, it wasn't that they were fighting over who would make the blessing, like we said, but rather they wanted to make sure that the one who would bless God, for the sake of God, would be the one who was appropriate to do so. And so David was not chosen because he was born that way, but because he fought every single day of his life for God's namesake. He spent every waking moment praising his Creator and owning up fully to his God-given shortcomings. God-given shortcomings. No excuses. Thanking God for them. Thank you for the opportunity to correct. Setting the tone for King Mashiach and the rectification of the world by overcoming its deficiencies and helping the world to do the same. And that is why David was chosen to bless the Lord at the banquet. And that's our class. As always, thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Have a Lag BaOmer Sameach, and have a Shabbat Shalom. Big things to come. Bye-bye.